So thanks for coming to today's session. My name is Meg, and I am the GIS and Data Visualization Librarian at the University of Manitoba. And today we are going to be talking about creating infographics using Piktochart. All of the workshop content is on in this visualization page or UML DataVis page. So workshops, and today we are in Piktochart. I'd asked you to create a free Piktochart before the session. So if you haven't done that and you want to follow along, please do that now. And then there's also some data to download, and it would be great if you could do that in advance of the session. There's also slides if you want to follow along, or if you want to mute me and just go through the exercise on your own, that's the next tab down. And we may as well get started. I am going to turn off my webcam so to maximize our screen space. And there we go. So as I mentioned, my name's Meg. I'm the Data Viz Librarian at the University of Manitoba. Before I worked in libraries, I worked as a cartographer and a GIS analyst, and part of what I did was design infographics. Our objectives today is that I want you to gain an overview of infographics and popular visualization strategies, become familiar with popular infographic software and what is supported through the university, and then explore the Piktochart interface. To do that, we're going to define our key terms, discuss visualization types and their uses, evaluate available infographic software, and then go through a Piktochart exercise where we will explore the interface and then create a simple infographic of climate summary data. So to start with, data visualization. The whole purpose behind data viz is to display complex information in a way that makes it easier for you or your end user to explore or understand what it is that you've done. And an infographic is a collection of imagery, charts, and the big thing is minimal text that gives an easy to understand overview of a topic or distills a theme. And so if you are creating an infographic, the purpose is not to put every single bit of your research data into that. What you're doing is pulling out one specific theme or story and using imagery, using data visualization techniques to kind of take the user through that story or help them explore that theme. If you want to make a graphic that is very text heavy, then you are making a poster, not an infographic. Two places to get started in terms of making infographics. The first is the DataViz LibGuide that I'll walk you through in a second, and then our training resources. So the same way that the subject librarians create their subject guides for different topics, I create a topic guide for data visualization. The link to the workshop section is right above my face. And then we've got sections for getting started, tools, and help. So if we look at the Getting Started tab, what I like to do is before I've created any visualizations at all, step back and break down what it is that I'm trying to show. Am I trying to show a comparison? Am I trying to show composition, distributions, or relationships? And you'll notice that in those categories, I have very few types of visualizations, and that's because what we're trying to do is make things simpler for our end user, and they might not necessarily understand intuitively how to interpret a hanging rootogram or something like that, but they do understand the idea of a column graph or a line graph or a map. So if you're doing basic data viz, here are some easy visualizations to start with. So if you're doing a comparison using a column graph, line graphs, bar charts, or cartographic maps, if you want to show composition using pie charts, stack bar charts, or tree maps, 5 to 7 categories maximum there. That's all that we can, as humans, kind of take in and easily interpret at once, or a cartographic map. If we're showing distribution, then looking at line graphs, histograms, scatter plots, cartographic maps again, and finally relationships using scatter plots, network diagrams, bubble graphs, concept models, and cartographic maps. If you are then trying to decide, well, how am I going to create these visualizations? There are many different tools that I support. We'll start with the accessibility checkers. So Coblis is a color blindness simulator. So if you're wondering what your visualization would look like to somebody who experiences color blindness, then you can use Coblis to check it out. What's also Coblis is also great for is if you're wondering what your graphic will look like if it's photocopied in grayscale or black and white, Coblis can check that for you. Color Brewer 2.0 is a good solution for selecting color palettes based on your project that are appropriate. Bunch of different visualization tools. If we stop and look at our two infographic options, there are many, many different tools that you can use to create infographics. PowerPoint is one of them. It's just the whole idea is you're making simple visuals. In terms of online tools that create editorial graphics, Piktochart and Visme are the two that I suggest because they are they have themes that are most relevant to researchers who are visualizing their data. They're not so much business centric or kind of cutesy K-12 centric. And the free tier gives you options of actually exporting graphics and not just keeping them online. They do both have a splash image at the bottom with for advertising purposes, but they're not too aggressive. Then this is a newer addition to this guide, but I get people coming to me and saying, I'm not that artistic, but I do need to visualize, and I'm not that artistic, and I have a career in visualization. How do I do that? Well, there are many, many tools out there that will help you with your font selections and your color selections. We'll go through them a little bit more in more depth in the slides, but just so you know, the links are here. Then we have our training options. So you guys are attending the infographic session that's today. There's only 3 more left this semester. And then starting again in the summer semester, I'll be running some of these again, as well as some new ones on font, color, all of that kind of thing. Data visualization, the good, the bad, and the ugly is a lot about data visualization theory and selecting the appropriate visualizations and colors for your data. So considerations to take before you even start creating your infographic. The first one is step back and think, what is your message going to be? And so you want to be selective. Creating an infographic that has all of your research data in it, or very, very broad themes, that might not be the best use of an infographic. There might be another visualization tool or solution for you. So if you are creating infographics, it's best for selective messaging. Think about who your audience is, and then select your colors and fonts kind of based on that. Is it a professional audience? Are they practitioners? Is it the general public? So thinking about those things. And then also thinking if they are specialist audience versus layperson, using engaging language that's appropriate to that audience. Then this is a big one, is our data requirements. So the structure and the actual requirements of your data. So depending on what your data actually looks like, that will kind of dictate what visualizations, what charts, maps, and graphs you can create, what you can ethically create with your data. With most of these tools, if you put data in, it will spit something out at you, and it's up to you to be critical and decide, oh, is this actually a meaningful graphic, or am I just creating junk? The other part is your data requirements. So if you have submitted an ethics protocol saying that your data must live on University of Manitoba servers, or it must live on a local machine or something like that. Uploading your data into an online visualization tool. The servers are in the States, overseas somewhere. There are many different places that data can be living. You're breaking your data residency requirements, so make sure you understand what your requirements are for your data before you use these online tools. So a brief note on color. We want to select color schemes that are appropriate to your data type. So if your data is discrete versus if your data is discrete versus continuous, then you want to choose a shade instead of a hue. If you are, sorry, the cat just came by. What you want to do is keep things neutral, for the most part, and then choose 2 to 3 accent colors maximum. Using a cool tool like Color Picker will help with that color selection. So with Color Picker, what you've got is you figure out some colors. So if I pick any green, then it gives me all of the tones. It tells me what some complementary colors are, or the different shades. And then I can copy and paste these values into my infographic tools, and everything will kind of match. So using a tool like this will make your color selection a lot easier and keep your infographic looking a lot more cohesive. There are color palettes in here as well, lots of different options. Then if we're looking at font, so infographics are supposed to be kind of more editorial style and engaging. So you could use Times New Roman and Arial for everything, and it wouldn't be the end of the world, but figuring out some creative font selections that are appropriate to your audience will do so much to kind of make your infographic more engaging. So remember that font has personality, and we want to select combinations that are appropriate for your audience. Once again, what we want to do is keep things simple. So what I like to say is 1 decorative font and 1 for the rest of the body text. And a tool like Font Pair will help you with that selection. So with Font Pair, you can say that you are interested in, these are Google fonts, and you can say that you're interested in 1 display font and 1 sans serif font. So display being the more ornamental ones, sans serif being better for web viewing. And then it tells you the names of each of those fonts. So we can see Flamenco being our header font, so that's what we would use for titles and for decorative text, and then ASAP for our body font. So there's lots of different tools out there that can help you choose these pairings, so you don't have to kind of go through and fuss around with it. And what we're going to do today is build a bite-sized visual using Piktochart. This is simple. We're not going to get through, we probably won't get through all of the steps in the rest of today's session. But I'm going to talk you through the major ideas that you can apply to any infographic software or any that you're using for visualization. So these are strategies that you can apply to your research data. The workshop is at content, if you came in late, is at bit.ly/picto_w2021. And I will arrange my screen now. Okay. Here. Yes. And I'll give you guys a couple of seconds to get your own screens arranged. So I'm calling it a bite-sized visual. And what I always say to people when they are starting out creating infographics is before you begin, before you open your software up, what we want to do, 3 things. We want to step back and think to yourself, okay, is what I'm trying to say, the message I'm trying to get across exploratory, or is it explanatory? If it's exploratory, then maybe an infographic isn't the best option for you. But if it's explanatory, then figuring out, okay, what is my story that I'm trying to get across? Then thinking, where will this be used? Is it something that you're going to be printing out on a letter-sized page? Is it going to be a social media post? What is it actually going to, where is it going to live, and what is it going to be used for? And that's going to help you select the appropriate size for your artboard and the number of visual elements that you're going to include. And then also, what is your data capable of? So we don't want to mislead the audience or create chart junk. So what we're going to do is this climate data example. And this is the background data. So what I will see a lot from researchers is they're really excited. They come in, they say, I've collected all of this data. Look at all of this data. Summary data, so exciting. And I want to visualize it. And what I say is, okay, first we're going to figure out what our main theme is. And so for us, it is going to be looking at Toronto and Winnipeg and pulling out key themes from the Toronto and Winnipeg data set. And to do that, what you could do would be to scroll back and forth and figure out, okay, well, I think I've got these headers. I've definitely got a lot of data here. But what I like to tell people is if you create another tab in your spreadsheet and then create plain language labels for each of your headings and copy and paste that data into it, then you can really see what it is you've got to work with. So when we drop all that data in, we see, oh, we've got some missing values, and some of it actually isn't that interesting. So going through your data set and saying, what can I do? What can I use in this that will actually be engaging? And then highlighting that will kind of help you center yourself. So for us, geography is really good at grounding your audience. So I want to include geography. So for us, it's Winnipeg and Toronto. We could look at highest monthly maximum for the month of January, or lowest monthly minimum is a little bit more exciting, so we'll use that. And then our total precipitation values are also kind of interesting. So we've decided that those are going to be what we're focusing on in our infographic. Then we can decide, okay, what's that kind of going to look like? And then just sketch it out somewhere. And I don't mean like be formal and do this in a graphic software. I mean, just wrap your head around what it is you're trying to do. So in our case, we are going to have a simple landscape infographic. It's going to be pretty small. We're going to have our title and subtitle up in the top right corner. We're going to put a chart in there, maybe some ornamental text to keep things interesting, because 2 charts, well, it's just not as interesting as some ornamental text and another chart. Put a map in the background, because we can do that, and to show our geography without taking up a bunch of excess space. And then we can get started in our software. So the first thing you want to do is access your workspace. When you log into the Piktochart, your Piktochart account, you'll land on the dashboard. My dashboard already has something in it because I've created something, but yours will probably look something like this that we have in step 2. So if we want to create a new item, we can either click the Create New Item button that's in the middle of your workspace, or we can click the little blue plus sign to create a new item. And then what we want to do is create an infographic. Piktochart didn't used to have all of these other options. They used to just be infographics, but they realized that if they created all of these different artboard sizes and kind of editorial options within them, that they could start charging people more money for the different tiers of access. So what we're doing is just plain old infographic. And then we want to start from a blank template. It will slowly load. And then you can see that it's loaded up this long paper, or long workspace. That is completely all right. So what do we have in our workspace? We have our Piktochart options that are across the top. So that's where your account is, when you want to export or share, if you want to preview your graphic, save it at any time, give it a name. Then number 2 down the side, the left-hand side, we have our objects. So when you want to create a new element. The number 3 spot is where all of the properties for each of those elements will be, or objects will be. And then our workspace is in the middle of the screen with number 4. So the first thing we're going to do is name your item. I'm going to name mine January 2, because I already have a January. And then we can just hit enter. And so now we have a name for our item. The next thing we're going to do is switch our workspace size into something more manageable. And to do that, what we do is we click the gear that is to the left of our artboard for settings, and it opens up our visual size. So we can change our width. Our width stays the same, and we're going to change our height to 500 pixels. So we can type that in, hit enter, and you can see it's changed our artboard size. You can click the gear again to close that box. The next thing we're going to do is set a background for our graphic. Stark white and black are just, they're hard on the eyes. So what I usually like to do is if I want something to have a light background or a dark background, then pick a really light gray or a really dark gray instead of stark white or black. So to do that, what we're going to do is click on our background option, which is the number 1. And then we can pick many, many options. Some of them will not be appropriate for our audience, so remember, it's up to you to make good decisions. The color we're going to pick is light gray, so if we click on the paint can under background colors, then the second option of grays from the right-hand side is E5, 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 which apparently is my favorite color. It's the background color for the workshop space as well. I just like it. I think it's a very nice gray. And now we can see that our workspace has gone from bright white to a lighter gray. The next thing we're going to do is upload an image into that. And why I've done this is there will be a lot of times where, depending on what infographic creator you're using, there just won't be an appropriate background for you. Or it just won't make a lot of sense for the tool you're using. So this bit is an aside and you don't need to follow along. But if I go to here, over to the tools and then select maps to use one of their custom maps for background and search for Canada, the Canadian map, the projection that they use is really skewed. And so it takes up a ton of space that we want to make use of in our infographic. So we're not going to use one of the pre-formatted backgrounds. We're going to create our own. So we're going to cancel out of that. And then we're going to upload an image, our own image. So to do that, what we do is click on the uploads option on the left-hand side. and then we can browse to our image that is in your data downloads folder. Depending on what browser you're using, you can also drag and drop the image in there. So for me, it's Canada PNG. I'm going to say OK. And you can see that the image has now loaded into your library. So you can click once to add that image, or drag and drop it. And it's pretty small. It's hanging out in the middle of our artboard. And what we want to do is make it more visually interesting. So we're going to click the image one time, left click it once to select it. And then to scale it without skewing, hold down your Shift key and pull out any of those corners. We want to make it roughly as wide as our artboard. And then just make sure that you've got the location where Toronto and Winnipeg show up on your map. Your artboard will cut off the top of that map, so we don't have to worry about doing any cropping. So now we've got our background image in place. It is still pretty visually dominant, and so we can change that by changing the opacity. And you can use this on any object you import into any infographic tool. We want to make it semi-transparent to make it less dominant. So with the image selected, we're going to go to our opacity options and just drop that down. I'm going to go to 62. You can do whatever you feel like. The other thing to note is that our infographic software builds things in the same way that a GIS does, so like a sandwich. And so we've got our things on the bottom, and then as you progress, you're adding things in layers on top and on top and on top. And so because you're going to be adding things on top of your map, you don't want it scooting around on you. So we can click on the lock to lock it in place. So now we have our map in the background. It's less bright and it's not moving anywhere, so we can't accidentally select it and move it or rescale it. The next thing we're going to do is add a title, subtitle, and surround text. We want to make something that is visually interesting to the user. And so what we're going to do is select our text option from the left side of the screen. And we're going to drag the title block over onto into our workspace. So the human eye naturally flows through the document from top left down to bottom right. If you've got a small document like this one, you can, but if you've got a small document like this one, you can kind of change that by creating something, putting something visually dominant somewhere else. So what we're going to do for visual interest's sake is we're going to put our title in the top right corner instead. So what you can do is you've got your title block in your map, on your map. You can copy and paste the title text from the workshop document over with by using keyboard shortcuts, Control-C and Control-V. So you can see that we now have title text. Our title text is center justified and in Montserrat, and we want to change that. I am choosing Oswald to be my dominant font, my decorative font, and Roboto to be my body text. You can choose whatever you so desire. So what we're going to do is select our text that we just pasted in, and using the toolbar across the top, we are going to change it from center alignment over to right alignment so that we can line things up with the right side of our page. Then we want to change our font from Montserrat to Oswald. We are going to bold the first line of our text by selecting it and selecting the bold option. I'm going to change it to size 36. And then just drag and drop drag the edge of your text box out so that everything fits on 2 lines. Title on the top line, subtitle on the second line, and then we can drop it into that top right corner. What we're also going to do is, for visual interest, is we're going to use color to symbolize the 2 cities, and we're going to carry that color through the rest of our infographic. So for me, Winnipeg, I'm going to make blue by selecting the color option from that top toolbar. And then I'm going to select Toronto and make it orange. So now I have a title and a subtitle, and I've created some interest by using color for each city name. The next thing we're going to do is add some graphics. There are many, many different graphics options in Piktochart. So on the left side of your screen, what you're going to do is select the graphics option. Then we are going to add shapes. You can see there are basic shapes, also features for entertainment. We're not interested in any of those things. What we want are markers. So if I search for the word marker in our search box, it brings us all of the marker options. Black options, you'll be able to select the color and change the color. And so you can pick any marker from here that you want and drag and drop it over to your map. I kind of like this chubby one at the bottom. It's a little bit more engaging. So I'm just going to drag, even though I want 2 markers at the end of the day, 1 for each city, I'm only going to drag 1, and I'll show you why. So once you have an object in the map, you can copy and paste it after you've set its parameters. So for me, I've dragged out 1 large marker. I'm going to hold the Shift key down to resize, and I'm going to make it a little bit smaller and drag it roughly to where Toronto is. I like that size, so with the marker selected, I can hit Control-C to copy and then Control-V to paste. And now I have another marker that's the exact same size. So I don't have to bother trying to match 2 sizes. Then what I want to do is change my marker colors. So with the marker selected, I'm going to go to that toolbar that's at the top of our screen and change the color from black to blue for the Winnipeg one. Select the Toronto marker and change it from black to orange. And you can see now we have 2 markers on our map. Because we're using color to symbolize those 2 different locations, and our graphic is very small, I don't feel like it's necessary to label Winnipeg and Toronto on the map face, because it's more for visual interest instead of telling a story. The next thing we're going to do is add a chart to our graphic. So down that left-hand side, what you're going to do is select the Tools option, and then we're going to add our chart. So we can drag our chart over onto the map, and the Charts dialog box opens up. What we're going to do is select the first option on the left side of that dialog box for a vertical bar chart. And then we want to delete our sample data that's in the spreadsheet. What you could also do if you had a larger data set would be import it. Or if you had a dynamic data set, so something that lived in Google Sheets or something like that and was being updated on the fly and you wanted that infographic to reflect that live data, you can make a dynamic data connection back to that data sheet. But bear in mind, if you move that data sheet or rename it in any way, you're going to break that link and you'll need to go back in and reestablish that connection. That's something that I see with researchers a bit, is they think they've broken their infographic and it's just that they've renamed a file. So it's going to be looking for a specific connection. So I'm going to delete the sample data that's in this sheet. And then I'm going to copy and paste my table that I have in the workshop document that gives the precipitation for Winnipeg and Toronto in January. Control C to copy, Control V to paste. Another thing that happens too with these different data visualization or infographic tools is that the tool will be expecting the data to be in a specific format to give you certain options. So for us, having precipitation be our row, and then the two cities we want to be in different colors be our column values. That will allow us to select two separate options. If you had the cities as your row values, then you won't get your two different color options. So we've pasted our data in, and we've got green bars, and we've got a legend. What do we want to do? We want to change our properties. So to do that, we select the gear that is below the insert chart, and that gives us all of our different chart options. Something I suggest doing when you are creating infographics is instead of using kind of a formal title, so like city versus precipitation or something like that, create something that's plain language or ask a question for your title. So I can copy the title from my workspace document and paste it into my chart title, which is in box number 1. And you can see that now my chart has a title. The next thing we're going to do is turn off our legend. I don't have that in the workflow document. But now you can see that our chart has cleaned up a bit. Then for number 3, under color options, we're going to change our colors to map back onto those Winnipeg and Toronto colors we had selected. So the first one is for Winnipeg. We can see that by hovering over it. And we want Winnipeg to be blue. The other one is for Toronto, and we want Toronto to be orange. And then we've changed our colors. For labels of charts and graphs, we want them to kind of fall into the background. We don't necessarily need them to be stark black or white if we have a dark background. So what we're going to do is select gray for our title color and text color, and it keeps those less visually dominant but still visible. Then we're going to click on the Insert Chart option, and you can see we have a chart that's been added into our graphic. We can use the sides of our handles to resize that chart. We don't have to worry about skew on this one at all. So you can make it as stubby or as tall as you would like. I want mine to be relatively tall, and it's tall enough so that my title is on 2 lines, and that it just takes up a fair bit of space within my infographic space. The next thing we're going to do is reduce visual clutter. So you can see that our background image kind of competes with our title and with our graph. Depending on what software you're using to create your infographics, some of them will give you an option to create a background color for your chart, but some of them won't. And so how can we contend with that? And it is with my most favorite thing to use in this case, SemiTransparent Boxes. So if we go to our graphics menu on the left side of the page, we can click the X beside our marker search if that still shows up to get rid of that and get back to our basic shapes menu. And then we're going to grab that square or rectangle. If you were feeling artsy, I suppose you could choose a raindrop or a cloud or something to act as the background. That's not the person that I am. I like things that are fairly simple, so I'm going to use a box. So I've dragged my box out onto my infographic face, and what I'm going to do is grab its bottom corner to kind of make it slightly larger than my chart. You can see that it now completely blocks our chart out, but that is completely fine. What we're going to do to deal with that is click once to select it. Then what we're going to do is change its color from black to light gray to match that initial background color that we selected. And we are going to make it semi-transparent because we don't want to completely block out our background image and make things feel disjointed. We just want to to make there be less clutter. So with our box selected, we can change the opacity again. I'm going to drop it down to, what did I say, 80%? And you can see that our chart kind of starts showing through, and we can see our map in behind it. Now what we want to do is put it to the right level for the rest of the sandwich. So with it selected, we can choose the arrange option that is to send backward. So with one click, it's gone backwards one step, and it's sitting behind our graph. And you can see it makes our graph show up more, and the text be easier to read. Now we've done all that work to make a nice semi-transparent box. So what we could do would be to drag those black squares out again, but we're actually just going to copy and paste so that everything stays the same. We want one box to hang out behind our title and a second box to go where that decorative text is going to go that we had planned for. And this is kind of where planning your graphic from the very beginning is beneficial, because then as you're building from bottom to top, you can think, oh, I know I'm going to be putting a graph here. I should probably make a white background for it, or a blue background, or whatever it is you're doing. And instead of fussing around, sending things to front or sending things backwards and trying to figure that out. So I'm going to copy 2 more boxes, Control C, Control V, and I can drag it out and over. And then another one to drag it out and over. So my first one, or my second one, I'm going to place it behind the title. And so I'm just using those handles to drag it around and resize it. And then we are going to use the arrange option again. And you're going to have to click send backwards a couple of times, because we've taken different steps through our graphic creation. If you had said send to back, it would send it all the way back behind your original map, and that's not what we want to do at all. So there. Now we have our background, and it's easier to read our title. And then we want to resize this other box so that we can put some decorative text on top of it. Another good reason to plan is so you just don't spend a bunch of time fussing around. Because it is very easy to get lost in all of these settings and thinking, oh, should it be 72% opaque, or should it be 80% opaque, or should this be this color, or should that be another color? You can spend a bunch of time fussing, but there are probably better things you could be doing with your life than fussing with an infographic. Or that's my opinion on that. So now what we're going to do is add some decorative descriptive text. We could just paste text in all in the same font and all in the same size, but what we're trying to do is make something engaging and visual for our end user. So how we're going to do that is with 3 separate text boxes, so that we see 3 separate text blocks so that we can arrange things as we want. So what we need to do is go to that left-hand side text menu, and then we are going to use 3 body text blocks. So there is one, here is another, and a third one. And then I'm going to copy each of those lines out that I want to put in my text box. Should have used a bigger text box. So our first one is, do you like the cold? And we will change it to Roboto condensed and size 23. Not italicized. And at this point, it's just a lot of fussing around with text. So you've got that in, and we want that one to be at the top. Our next one is lowest monthly minimums were. And we want that to be Roboto again. Not italicized. And font size 16. And you can just continue to edit your text from there. I added another box for a citation. Remember that if your graphic is going to be exported as a PNG file, or is going to be used in print, using a hyperlink is not going to be helpful to anybody. Also, using our tooltips on our graphic, also not going to be helpful to anybody. So by thinking about what your end game is, that will help you make your decisions as you go. And you can see that there in the text option, there are many different things you could have used instead of a gray box. Some more exciting and some more relevant than others. Like your mailbox is probably not going to be something you're going to be wanting to drop in and use in a research data presentation, but it exists, so it's up to you to kind of choose, make good choices. And yeah, definitely email if you've got specific questions on creating infographics for your specific research needs. And that's kind of what I'm here for, is to support you visualizing your research data. And if you work for the institution and you're looking for it from a more administrative perspective, I also meet with researchers and people that work in various departments for their data visualization needs. So